Hello everyone. So I hope your previous slide lectures went very well. Now we are at cascading style sheets. This is lecture 2 for web development course 158.258. Right, so in this lecture we were going to cover some background knowledge about CSS. What is CSS? Some anatomy and syntax of CSS. Then we'll look at the selectors, and then we will see what CSS box model is, what are dimensions, positioning, text and fonts, colors and backgrounds, and then transitions and transform. So yeah, if we start off with introduction, what is CSS? It is short for cascading style sheets, definitely, but it is the primary language. It is the language for presentation. It is the language for formatting, and it is a language that is separating your documents from structure mm, and presentation. So why we do CSS, why we use CSS is because in traditional HTML, which has content plus formatting rules, was making um, documents unstructured, not easy to read, not easy to write. There was more redundant code in there. So what CSS is doing is separating the content from formatting. And how is it doing it? For example, you have this kind of HTML earlier. What this HTML tag is doing, there is font, face is its property, and we're giving the property, we're giving the color, we're then giving the text if it's italic or bold and whatever. And then we had another font face which was telling us that the elements here should be highlighted, and the other font face where we were telling that it is bold. It is bold. Here you can see that we are writing the code again and again just to change one value. But with CSS, what we are doing here, we use a style tag in HTML. This is known as inline CSS. We are using highlight selector, and in that highlight selector, we're giving color, font style, font weight, font size, and font family. Now, if you want to use the same piece of code, we can just say span class highlight text, span class highlight highlighted elements, and then span class highlighted, and then span closed. So it will just make the text blue and highlighted with the font face that we want. We are going to see how we prepare CSS. To prepare CSS, we use the again style tag for inline CSS. We are giving H1 a color of deep blue sky, deep sky blue, and then we're writing hello world. Now this hello world will come in as a as in deep sky blue color. And then we have a selector with one property and one value. What we have here is a selector with one property and one value. The curly braces allow to group several properties. Colon is the parser where the property starts and ends, and the value starts. So this is the property, colon. This is the value of the property, and then semicolon, which tells that the value is ended. If we look at a more complex example, we can see that you can make all H1, H2, H3 of same color, same background, and same margin. And then H2 color you can change. So this is for consistency. This is for reducing the redundant values from your files, because we need to have a consistent interface. So CSS parsers don't care about white spaces, um, and just like HTML. So when you are testing your web page using CSS, you should be running them through different browsers to see if that browser is supporting the CSS properties. Now, because CSS is interpreted by the browsers have something more, have some more properties to uh, to to make things easier, because CSS is just a specification, it's not a law. So some browsers can provide you with more properties for you to perform more advanced things, but that means if you're using it, it is possible that your website do not run in other browsers. So you need to be really careful when you are using advanced properties. Having said that, you can always have some checks which can fall through. So for example, if you have used an advanced property to run on some advanced browser, you can always have a second option listed, so that if that doesn't work, the other option work in some other browsers. So it's just programmatically you can adjust your web pages. Right, so linking CSS to HTML, there are three ways. We have already seen two ways of doing them, but I haven't told you. Anyway, there's one as inline CSS, or the style attribute. We just did that. And then document wide CSS, and then global CSS through external documents that we will be using span. Anyways, span style is equal to color blue, text decoration underline. Now, CSS would come on your browser like this with blue color and underlined. As I said, span will only cover uh, the web page as much as it requires. So issues with inline CSS through the style attribute, that it defeats the reusability. So it's just, it's doing the same thing that we were doing with simple HTML formatting. The code is still redundant. And the other major drawback with this is the style code will always have to be downloaded each time your page is requested, which is very inefficient. But why are we using them still now is because we need just to, testing purposes. But you do not need to overuse it. The second style is using document-wide CSS, where we use the style in our head element of an HTML page, and then we can add more styles to that page. But as your web page grows, this becomes cumbersome again. So we move towards the next style, which is through external CSS document. Now, with external CSS document, you create your CSS file, and then you call that CSS file just like you call any other hyperlink. So for CSS linking, you use link, Arial's style sheet, and type CSS. This is usually the same. What changes is your file name. So href is equal to style.css, or whatever your file name is will go here. Right. So when you're using it as an HTML, you say span class highlight. Now it will use highlight from your file. Text span closes with, and then classical highlighted elements in span class highlight it. Now, if you look at this code and this code, they are same. It's just that one is called from within the page, and the other one is an external to the page. You can have only one style sheet, or you can increase your style sheets as your website grows. So you can have one or two more web style sheets, depends on the size of your project. So a selector name must begin with an underscore, a hyphen or a letter, and followed by any number of hyphens. So element you have on your web page can be used in your CSS file, and you can change their attributes. So for example, P is an element in HTML, and you can change its properties in CSS. So for example, P color colon red will just make your paragraph red, foreground color red, and then B font weight normal will, what will it do? It will just remove anything which is bold to normal in your web page. Then we have class selectors. Class selectors are just like element selectors, but you can name them yourself. They are elements that you make up, so you can give them good names, relevant names. In this example, you have dot red. So any class selector starts with a dot. Then you set the properties of that selector, color red, and then beautiful class, font weight, colon, bold, color, colon, bold, blue, font style italic. Now, when you use it in your page, you'll use it like p class equal to red. Here is some text. Span class is equal to beautiful. This part is especially pretty. Now, how do you think this would come? Here, some text will come in red foreground. Span class beauty will be bold, blue, and italic. Right. Um, so this is the way it should be coming on your browser. Then we have element specific classes. In element specific classes, what you can do is for each element of your HTML page, you can specify some classes which are uh, just relevant or just related to specific elements. So for example, span, beautiful. Now only span would be beautiful. Here's some B class equal to beautiful text. How do you think it would come? And then span class equal to be beautiful. This is especially pretty. Now this one will, there is no beautiful class separated from span, so this will come just like, just black, while the other part is span dot beautiful. Therefore this part is especially pretty will come in bold, blue, and italic. Then we have multiple classes, so you can specify multiple classes when you are using them. So for example, this in this example, we have status class, we have error class, and we have information class. And when we in our div, when we try to use it, we are using a div class equal to status error. Now how would you think this is an error will come out? So it will be status is padding 5 pixels, 5 pixels, border and style, while this is an error will come in red and border color maroon, like this. And then status information will come as same border but in blue and navy border. Right, so then we come to ID selector. ID is again similar to class, but it will only target to single element of a page and starts with a hash. So for example, hash main header green yellow, and it will be h1 id main header hello css. So only one element in the whole page. So it is used for larger structural elements which are not repeated, so that it remains as specific for that one element. Then we have element specific ID selectors. So for example, h1 main header With that in place, a specific ID will only appear for header1 tag. We can also group our selectors. For example, H1, H2, H3. They all can be grouped with and their color is maroon like this. Or we can have you know they are all grouped in one, but their style can be overridden as well. So H1 is maroon, but its background color is silver, its padding is 10 pixels, and its text is left aligned. While H2 and H3's background colors are gray. The the style gets overridden, and whatever you've written the latest will override whatever you wrote earlier. So it won't come like this. I have to put this in a Visual Studio file to show you actually how it works, but I'll go through this once and then we'll look at the same data through Visual Studio. The CSS box model. The CSS box model describes how the elements are laid out in margins and paddings and borders. So every HTML element has three different states: block, inline, or not displayed. A block level element, the whole width, available width, while inline just results in how much it requires. Only block level elements can have custom widths and heights. Um, Inline does not break the current flow. Inline element only takes up the space it needs. So for the rest of the slides, I will use Visual Studio, and then we will see how these examples are playing. So we'll go to our Visual Studio. I'll create a new website, ASP website in Lecture02 CSS. Just wait. And then I will add a new item, which should be my HTML page. Lab lecture 2. And the other thing that I want to mention here is there is no design and design view and source view here. But if we go to so we go here and we go open with, and we use web forms editor, okay, and say yes, it gives us design view and split and source view. So I am in HTML. I want to add title lecture 2. Then we are adding, so I'll just go here, what is required, and this. Right, so I want to import this style. For this style to work, I'm just putting it in our head, document white style, and doing nothing else, because yeah, I can make it an external file, but for these purposes right. So you have put the style here in document wide CSS, and then Within our body, we have div id box1, class box look, and all that, and body closes here, and HTML. If you look at the design, you can see box 1 some content, box 2 long text is automatically wrapped. And why is it automatically wrapped? Because we have specified 100 pixels of width and 100 pixels of width here, height here, and otherwise it was block level. um, so now we move forward to our next slide, relative absolute position. For relative absolute position, I'm again copying this portion, um, and showing what it'll do. To easily comment out your work, you just select everything and do this. I find it really handy. But see if it's, oh yeah, this is div span. Sure, if I have, yeah, it's all good. And then style for relative and absolute position. Again, I'm just going to do this and add this, and you can see that the style changes. So what it is doing is making a parent box with width 300 and height 300 pixels, and with box 1 of width 25% and height 75% of that 300. Yeah. So, you can play with these relative and absolute positions in CSS. And then in the next slide, we're looking at fixed position. Now, what fixed position is doing, it'll put a block, something that you want to, in a fixed position on your web page. Even if you scroll down, it won't move. So for example, just again doing this, taking this here. So this is a class that we have used, top fixed, position fixed, top 0, right 0. So it should come in top right corner, background color this, and padding this. While div class top fixed element to the top, and there is some filler text there. So Ctrl S, and you can see that it comes somewhere here. Right. Then we have floating elements. Floating elements position your text according to the picture that you have on the page. So it'll adjust the picture of your page based on your content, just like Microsoft Word does with positions. So you can position um, your image in line with the document. And similarly with, for example, this is a container class we're using with 300 pixels, background color, some padding, and then we are saying justify image. And we're saying float this image to the left. And this image is not this one I'm going to use. I'll just use some other images in my folders. Let's see. I'm using some images. So wheel marker, add. Okay. So wheel marker.png you have to use here. src wheel marker.png. Yeah. So you can see it. Again, and I increase the size, which is, so if I change something in my design view, it accordingly changes the height and width in my source view. Just take. So yeah, there's a wheel marker there, and you can see that your text just floats with the image, and your text will always stay with your image. That is what floating elements are, and they're very powerful CSS elements. Next, we have advanced typography. In advanced typography, you can actually change the text. The text can be transformed into uppercase. There are different properties, so you can transform into uppercase. Font size is text transform uppercase. So whatever in H2 is written should be transformed to uppercase, even if you write it in lowercase. First line transform to uppercase. Whatever you write in the first line, it should be transformed to uppercase. And then you have this text. Um, so headed to check uppercase. Hello class of 2018 uppercase. And then this now if you see here, this is paragraph, then and again this is paragraph which is starting, so it should be in uppercase, but the font is different because the font is size is 1.7 em for H2 only, but font for other paragraph should be normal. Right. This was advanced typography, and you can fiddle around more and see how it works. Then CS3 transitions allow you to change property values very smoothly over a given duration, just like your PowerPoint slides. They introduce 4 properties: which property or properties to target, what is the duration, what is the timing, and some optional delay if you require to complete that transition. So one is linear. Ease in specifies a transition with a slow start. Ease out specifies a transition with a slow end. And then you have ease in out, and then cubic visor as well. So to create transition effect, you must specify 2 things. One, the CSS property that you want to add an effect to, and the duration effect. So you could have like you know transition with 2 seconds, for example, and yeah, let's see if you have an example here. So we have an example here where we are saying that background transition, we are creating a class background transition with text alignment center, background color, and some width and minimum height. But what the transition is all 2 seconds ease in 0. And then we have background transition hover. Now this is also known as pseudo classes. So there are different pseudo classes that you can use. One is hover, which it corresponds to when you want to hover on some text and you want some kind of transition. So here what I'm going to do, I'm going to just copy paste this text and I'll take the style to the style area, and see you have this background style. Format element padding to is background hover contour blue, Control S, and then we have background transition. So I'm just time is out of sync. So just go here again. Now this is not transitioning as it should, which we'll just go and check in the browser. Somehow I'm using Microsoft Edge because my it is changing the color, and you can see the time is taking to change to all the colors. And with your background transition in design view, this is not. So you have to go to your actual browser and see the results. So if I'll try it and change it to Chrome, somehow my Chrome was not changing anything for me. Therefore, anything, background transition doesn't do anything, but it should change to cornflower blue color crimson. How the browsers are responding to your changes. So for example, if you go back, all tools ease in would mean that there is a slow start, and transition properties all, transition duration is 2 seconds, and timing is ease out, and transition delay is 0. So you can specify other things as I think that's all for now from CSS.